I think executives, like all of us, have demanding schedules. They have a lot of competing priorities and they're kind of context switching all day. So they likely have far less context on the topic that you're discussing than you do. And so it's really your job to control the narrative.
Welcome to the Unspoken Wisdoms Micro Podcast with Mirita, your go-to guide for your tech career journey. In this episode, we will be talking about making a great impression on C-suite executive with our special guest speaker, Annie Pearl, the Corporate Vice President at Microsoft.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Let's dive into today's topic, which is very interesting. As we all know, in big tech company, to meet C-suite executive is incredibly challenging, let alone making a lasting impression when the opportunity arises. Based on your experience as CVP at Microsoft, what is your top 3 wisdom for making a great impression on these high-level leaders?
Yeah, great question and really important topic. 3 tips that come to mind for me. I think the first is come prepared. Whether you're asked for the meeting or, you asked for the meeting, first and foremost, you really need to be prepared. And it's always better to be over-prepared than under-prepared and risk making a bad impression. So kind of how do you prepare? I think you want to make sure you do your homework. So make sure you understand what's the executive looking to get out of the meeting? What are their goals? What are their concerns? What are their tops of minds? Make sure you do your research with those who work closely with the executive and figure out how do they like to receive information? What pitfalls have they seen others fall into during meetings, and how can you really make sure you're setting the conversation up for success? So I think that's the first is really, do your homework when you're preparing. I think you also want to really be clear on what does success look like. Work backwards from the end in mind of what you're trying to get out of the meeting and figure out from there, what do I need to do during that meeting in order to achieve the goal that I'm trying to accomplish as part of the meeting. And then lastly, you can conduct what I call not a post-mortem, but a pre-mortem, where you list out what are all the things that could go wrong in the meeting, and then kind of work backwards from there to de-risk those negative outcomes. Because if you work through what are all the things that could go wrong, you can, put things in place to help avoid events. So I think that's the first is just come prepared. Preparation really shows respect for the conversation. And I think it will really increase the likelihood that you're kind of ultimately walk away with a good impression. So that's the first is come prepared. I think the second is really hone your storytelling skills. I think executives, like all of us, have demanding schedules. They have a lot of competing priorities and they're kind of context switching all day. So they likely have far less context on the topic that you're discussing than you do. And so it's really your job to control the narrative. Put yourself in the shoes of the executive and someone with zero context and craft a compelling story to help them really kind of quickly understand what's the current situation, any relevant historical context, and based on both of those, what's your plan going forward. So one idea is you could use Copilot to help provide you feedback on your narrative and kind of workshop the storytelling with you. And once you've honed your story, you need to really practice and practice and practice, right? I think you want to practice on your own. You want to do dry runs with colleagues or use an AI assistant that has voice capabilities to be able to practice with as well. So great storytelling is going to help make sure that, not just making a great impression during the meeting, but it will also help you better communicate afterwards with your teams and beyond. So that's the second is really hone your storytelling skills. And then lastly is, communicate impact. I think progress against activities they're important as milestones, but what gets execs really excited and what they're really looking for is impact. So, bring the quantitative data, bring the qualitative feedback, use metrics to help create clarity around not just what work is getting done and what activity is taking place, but what's the impact that's really being made, and really make sure you help paint the picture of how that impact ties to the bigger picture and the goals that the exec themselves cares about. So last thing on impact, it's a team sport, so make sure you're also not just highlighting your own achievements, but those who contributed as well. So those are my 3 tips. Come prepared, hone your storytelling skills, and communicate impact.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to click subscribe below. And remember, wisdom often comes in unspoken moments. This is Rita signing off from the Unspoken Wisdom.